What vegans get wrong about the science behind meat consumption. First video on the new channel, Holistic Health with Travis Wu. Welcome in. And we're starting off with a banger, something super controversial, and also something that's super important to me, something that I'm super passionate about. Not because I want to be right, but because it bothers me how many young people I see, especially young women who are trying to do everything to be healthy, and they don't know why their hair is falling out, why their skin is bad, why they have low energy, they need B12 shots, they need iron shots. And they're trying to be healthy because the science to them suggests that eating meat is unhealthy, it's going to lead to heart attack, it's going to lead to other problems. So what do? So we're going to look at this from a nuanced perspective. I'm going to help you with scientific literacy so you can learn how to read scientific studies for yourself and get into some of the limitations around the knowledge that we have in the studies we have around meat consumption. But first, cameo appearance. Hello, this is Nolani. This is my dog. If you hear some funny noises, it's because she's on the side acting funny. So let's get into it. Now, the point here isn't, again, for me to be totally right about everything. If you think I'm wrong, please explain down below. Your cooperation is valuable. So let's get right into it. Now, I said it affects young women. It affects young women a lot, but it affects everybody. Where it's like, I heard meat was unhealthy, I'm trying to eat less meat. What is the truth? Well, before we get into any kind of truth, which I don't know that we're going to get into any truth, we're going to start by looking at, there's two kinds of studies in science primarily that you should know. So number one, and we're going to kind of compare them, is observational studies. And number two is interventional studies. I've never been known for having the best penmanship. I'm happy if you can read it. So look. There's two kinds of studies that we do in science primarily. There's observational and there's interventional. In observational studies, where we send out polls and we send out surveys and we ask you, do you eat meat? What is your diet like? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Are you having unprotected sex? A long list of things. And taking those and then over time grouping people and saying, hey, the people who answered a certain way are having different health outcomes, right? So there are a lot of observational studies that have found that people who eat a lot of meat suggest that they have more heart attacks or negative health outcomes. But we're going to come back and explain why we use our scientific literacy. Observational studies are not conclusive. We think of observational studies, the best use for them is to create a thesis and to use interventional studies to try to prove it. So why is that? Well, it's because these are just surveys. Now, when an interventional study, what is an interventional study? An interventional study is like a randomized trial. It's an A/B test where you take 100 people and you split them into two groups randomly, and half the groups get one treatment, the other half gets the other treatment. One half of the groups gets a meat-only diet, the other half gets a vegan-only diet. There haven't been a lot of studies like that, but there are interventional studies on meat consumption, and we will look at those and we'll come back to them. But we need to start with the observational studies because this is where a huge amount of the confusion lies. So when you're seeing studies that are associating meat with negative health outcomes, they're almost primarily observational. And I encourage you, to go do your own research, go on Google, go on ChatGPT and ask. So the problem with the observational studies that are finding negative outcomes with eating meat is behavior clusters. So over the past 70 years, a long time, decades, the consistent messaging has been eat less meat, meat is bad for you, eat more vegetables. So what that does is the people who are trying to be healthy eat less meat. So you have two behavior clusters. So behavior cluster number one is say vegan or vegetarianism, right? And it's maybe, what else are healthy behaviors? Would be exercise, and it would be sobriety, right? And it would be good sleep, right? And you have behavior cluster number 2. These are people who don't really care about their health. They're not trying to be healthy. They eat meat, they eat hamburgers, they eat hot dogs, they drink beer, they smoke, they ride motorcycles, right? They don't care. So you can see when we look at observational studies that are finding, all the observational studies, they're not finding that meat's unhealthy necessarily. They're finding that group number 1 has better health outcomes than group number 2. But if we look at the diet, it's only one factor of many factors, right? If you're to control for meat, we see something else, which is what the interventional studies can do. So when you have an observational study and you're taking all this information, the suggestion is that meat is maybe unhealthy, but we need to go ahead and we need to look. It's just a hypothesis. This isn't any kind of proof. And we can see how it's biased by the messaging we get, where we hear that meat is unhealthy, therefore people who are trying to be healthy eat less meat, and they also do a lot of other things different. And people who don't care about health at all are more likely to eat more meat, but they're also more likely to do all these other things. So you can see, is meat the reason why the beer drinkers, the smokers, the motorcycle riders who don't exercise aren't living as long or having worse health outcomes? Or could it be these other things, right? So these observational studies are hugely biased and flawed because of the messaging and because of behavior clusters. And for the most part, they're not evidenced in any way. So most of the evidence that you hear that meat is bad is from these observational studies that are biased by behavior clusters. These books that are full of studies, they're almost all observational studies. So there is a lot of studies, there is a lot of science that suggests meat is bad, but if we're scientifically literate, we can say that's not conclusive at all, and there's a reason why that looks super biased, right? So let's go ahead and let's look at the interventional studies, because the observational studies, at best, they can form a hypothesis, and the interventional study can be something closer to proof. So let's look at interventional studies. What do they say? Interventional studies. So again, you can go on ChatGPT or Google and investigate for yourself. I'll tell you, it's not conclusive. There's not as much data as we would like. There's no studies that control for a lifetime. There's studies that control for short amounts of times. But I will tell you, from the interventional studies that they've done, where they look at, is meat eating bad for you? Or they control 2 groups. This group eats meat, this group doesn't eat meat. And that's the one that's randomized. One of the negatives they found was that with a 2-week meat diet, the meat eaters had higher LDL cholesterol, which is associated with cardiovascular disease. They didn't find, though, that these meat eaters had more cardiovascular disease. They found that the meat eaters have higher LDL, which they think might lead to cardiovascular disease. So is that conclusive? To me, that's not conclusive at all. There's arguments around the context of LDL, but it's not. All they found was increased meat consumption gives you a certain health marker, but not certain health outcomes. They didn't go that far. But what they did find for other studies where they looked at interventional studies on make this group eat meat, make this group not, the groups that were given meat, they had greater muscle mass and better physical performance on a number of areas. So the negative studies found higher LDL cholesterol, but no specific health problems. And the positive studies found greater muscle mass, greater athletic performance. So if we look at that, to me, the interventional studies, it's not conclusive, but there's more evidence that increased meat consumption is good for you, right? Now, I'll also say, to my knowledge, there isn't an interventional study that exists that is comparing people who only eat high quality, local, pastured animal products to regular animal products, or to low quality animal products, or high quality animal products to nothing, or to veganism. So we don't even know, also, we have no scientific evidence that it's better to eat pasture animal products. I'm pretty certain, confident that it is, compared to, it's better to eat higher quality products, but we don't have that. So there's serious limitations to the science. And what I'm going to tell you, again, it's not conclusive. So you have to use your own brain and think and decide for yourself. But all the science that people like to cite about meat being unhealthy, it's, if you are scientifically literate and you look, it's not very strong, because it's mostly observational studies biased by the health messaging over the past decades, creating behavior clusters where people with a lot of healthy behaviors aren't eating meat, people with a lot of unhealthy behaviors are eating meat. And you can create a hypothesis, but you can't say it's the meat versus the not meat that is causing these people to live longer. It's probably other things as well. But we can find that if we look at the interventional studies, the negatives of meat are not clear. They're not linking to specific health problems, but the suggestion of correlation that it might. But it's linked directly to positive health outcomes like increased muscle mass, better athletic performance, and so on. So you decide, and this is something that I think is important, because, yeah, I mean, you could say, are you scientific or are you anti-scientific? Well, there's limitations to science, and literacy is really important, because it's hard, and it's not enough to just look at a study and say, okay, this one suggested, right? And it's not enough to say cholesterol is bad, or fat's bad, and these things. Well, we need to actually link them to real life health outcomes and correlate them and say this causes this, not just it's associated. So I'm personally going to keep eating meat. The evidence, to me, suggests that it's healthy. The scientific evidence suggests that it's healthy to me. My personal anecdotal experience is pretty good with meat consumption. And yeah, I really would like to spread this. So if you found that this is useful, go ahead and send it to someone who might find it useful. I know when it comes to diet, most people already have their minds made up and are not looking to change. So that might be true of you too. But I'd love to try to help more people. So make sure to subscribe. This is the start of this new channel. It's not going to be daily videos. I don't know how consistent it's going to be at all, but I'm going to share a lot of the knowledge that I have over health. That's hard-earned. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not a physical trainer. I'm a man who aspires to be in good health, and I have my body to show for it. And I have my own hard-earned knowledge and my ability to interpret scientific literature, which we will be doing more of. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that I'm wrong. I'm happy to hear it. So see you down below. Appreciate you. Much love. Talk soon. Peace.